Hey guys, and welcome to How to Code Basic. Today I'm going to give you guys an intro on what HTML is. So, HTML is a hypertext markup language. Now that means that it's a markup language that's read by the browser, and the hypertext means that it's meant for the World Wide Web, which is www, as you all know. And if you don't, well, you do now. So the way I'm gonna show you guys how HTML works, and the way I'm gonna teach you guys HTML is we're gonna make a very simple game. It'll seem boring to others, but the fact that you made it will seem pretty cool. So go ahead and create a new HTML file called game.html. At least that's what I'm going to call it. I'm gonna go ahead and title it. So first of all, in HTML, you have a couple of parts. The first one is the doctype.html. This tells the browser to read the whole file as if it's an HTML file. Then you have the two HTML tags. All of the code goes inside these two HTML tags except for the doctype HTML. Because sometimes there's other types of things, such as the XML version 1.0 and stuff like that, which is why we use doctype.html, because it's not the only language that browsers can read. So inside this HTML, or inside both of these HTML tags, we have a start tag, which just says HTML with the left arrow and a right arrow, and then we have an end tag right here, which starts with a left arrow and a front slash, which is a normal slash, with the text HTML, and then the right arrow. So this is how all start tags and end tags should look. It will have some text inside, but they will always start with a left arrow and end with a right arrow. As for end tags, they will always start with a left arrow, is what I'm going to call it, and a front slash, and then they'll have the text inside, which is just the element, and then they'll have the right arrow. So inside of these two HTML tags, we have two head tags and we have two body tags. So inside the head is pretty much what's not shown on the screen, on the main body. So let me go ahead and show you guys what the body is. So in this thing right here that I made in like 10 seconds, this right here, this is the top of the browser, where you have the X, the little maximize and minimize, and then the little window button, and then right here is where the title goes. So right here where you see these two title tags, same with this right here in the head, this is where you go ahead and put the title. So if I go ahead and rename this title Hello World with two exclamation marks, save, and then refresh, you're going to see the text Hello World with two exclamation marks right there, because that's what the title does. And this not only works in Chrome, but this works in every single other browser. So inside of these head tags, you have a meta tag. Now this only has one start tag and tag type of thing, and this tells the browser how to read this HTML file. So the character set that we always use when we're programming in HTML is UTF-8, but there are other char sets or character sets, such as there's EUCJP, ISO, ASCII, which is a ASCII standard for the company, or not the company, the organization. And then we have UTF-8, which we always use, and then there's two more made by Windows. But we're normally going to use UTF-8. So then in these two title tags, if you don't have these on your page, you can might as well write them down by now. And then I'm going to go ahead and write game, or my simple game. My simple HTML game is what I'm going to write in between these two title tags. So that's your head tag. In your head tag goes everything that's not in the body. The body is everything that you see in a browser. So right here, this HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is all inside the body. If you go ahead and open up another page, like for instance, if we go ahead and open up Google, we'll see that this right here, everything right here is in the body. and then whatever's in the head is usually styles. So like right here, when you scroll down, you see all these styles. You see a square right here with the border. These are all what we call styles. And then right here, the centering of text, and then the layout. That's how you use styles. That all goes in the head. So for now, we're gonna go ahead and use the body. So you guys are gonna have to learn some new commands today. The first one I'm going to teach you guys is H1. Now this H1 tag is a header tag. What the header tag does is inside these two tags you can type anything you want. I'm going to go ahead and write hello world. Go ahead and save and then refresh. Actually, and then it should say hello world. So this is an H1 tag. Just by itself, it's the largest header that's available. You have other H tags such as H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. So the larger the number is, the smaller it gets. So let me show you guys an example. There's no H7. There's an H6. I'm going to go ahead and write hello world. 2 exclamation marks, save it. And then when I go ahead and refresh, you guys will see the difference between the two. I have hello world, this is an H1, and then this is an H6. Now H1 is usually a header for a main object on the website, and then the H2 through 6 would be subtitles, subheaders, and then subtitles, etc. So now let me show you guys another element. These right here are all called HTML elements, and this one is a new one. I like to call this the P element or the paragraph element because you could literally type as many things as you want in this. I will go ahead and copy this and paste. Right, now go ahead and save. And then this is what a P does. You could literally type a paragraph of something. So that's why I call it the paragraph element. We are going to use this for the descriptions of the game that we're going to be making. The next one that I'm going to show you is a link. So the way a link works is you use the letter A, and then you press a space after that left arrow. Then you go ahead and type in href, is how I sound it out, H-R-E-F, the equal sign, and then if you're using Visual Studios or any other IDE and you have the autocomplete, it'll go ahead and put in 2 quotation marks. And in here is where you type a link. So I'm going to go ahead and link this to Google. But in links, you can't just go ahead and type in google.com. It's not that simple. Because if I were to go ahead and type in google.com and then close the tag and then write hi, or no, I'll go ahead and write Google. Save. And then if I were to go ahead and use this link, it would not take me to Google. Instead, it would take me to google.com on this server. Now, the way to get to Google using a link is you always have to use the HTTP and then the front slash. Now, if you want it to be secure, then you can go ahead and do HTTPS. Now, if I go ahead and refresh, click on this, it'll go ahead and open google.com. So now, the way you can go ahead and make these links open in another tab, and to do that, you can go ahead and type in target equals the 2 quotation marks, and then you have underscore blank. If you go ahead and save that and then refresh, it's going to go ahead and open it in a new tab. Now if you go ahead and type in underscore self and then save, it's going to go ahead and open it on the same page. But there are others. For an example, there's parent, which goes ahead and opens it in a new window, I'm pretty sure. Nope. And top doesn't do anything. it does. There. So you use the underscore blank to go ahead and open a link in a new tab. So we're going to be using links in this to make it simple, or we could use buttons. Now this is where things get a little tricky. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the next element, which is called an input element. Now this input element isn't like all these other elements where they have a start tag and an end tag. This only has one tag, kind of like the doctype.html or doctype.html. So now in here, if you were to just go ahead and type input, everything when you write it is always set as default. And the default for everything is always black color, text align left. And for inputs, if you don't go ahead and specify what type of input it is, it's going to automatically turn into a text input. Now this is just a text box. It doesn't do anything. So you can go ahead and type in type equals the two quotation marks, and then you have all these options that you can choose from. So the ones that we're going to be using today are buttons. Now input type button goes ahead and makes a button. Now this button doesn't do anything, but in order to put text into it, I'm pretty sure that you do this. You use the value command, the equal sign again, and these are right here are called attributes. This type equals button and this value equals my button. These are both attributes. So when we use the link and then we did the href and then we went ahead and typed in a link like this. This right here is an attribute for this element. Okay. And that's how you get text into an input button. The second way you can do buttons is there's an actual tag or element called button. Now if you go ahead and just do this and nothing else, it's just going to be a small button like that because it has no text. Whatever you write in between these two button tags is the text that is displayed in the button. So I'm going to write hello world. So now you have a button that says hello world and you have an input type button that says my button. So now there's also other types of inputs such as date. So input type equals date, and then what that does is that lets you choose, or that lets the user choose the date. So in Google Chrome it'll show up like this, where you have a 2-digit month, 2-digit day, 4-digit year, but you can't type into it. Oh, never mind, you can. And then you have a drop down right here that shows you a calendar, and then if you click on this button, that's today's date. Or you could use these two arrow buttons to go ahead and change the value, or you could clear it and then just type it in yourself. That's what it does in Google Chrome, but in other places like Microsoft Edge or Internet Explorer or Opera or Firefox, it's different. We also have the input type radio, which looks very familiar, or it'll look very familiar to you. It's a multiple choice button pretty much. And then we also have checkboxes, which work just the same pretty much. And the way to put text with these checkboxes and radios is to use the value and then go ahead and type hello world for now. Nope. And if that doesn't work, then this always works, where you give it a name. So I'm going to call it my checkbox. And then here I'm going to go ahead and create a new label. What the label does is, it's in the name, it's a label. Now you can use the for command, and then we made the name my checkbox, so we can go ahead and type in my checkbox, and then go ahead and type in your text here. So there it is. So now that you guys have a little brief intro on HTML, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what else you can do in the head. So inside the head, we can use CSS. Now I will explain CSS in another video, but you guys will learn some commands in CSS today, or in this video. So first off, CSS is usually put in the head because it will help the web page load faster, because the head is loaded in the background while the body is actually visible right here. So in order to put CSS into an HTML document, we are going to use the style tags. So inside these style tags, we can go ahead and type in our CSS. So all this text that I have right here, I'm going to go ahead and make it in the center by doing this. In order to access a tag, like this is a body tag, so anything inside the body, I'm going to go ahead and center it. To do that, whenever you want to go ahead and access a tag in CSS, you just type the tag, or the text inside the tags. So in this case, that'd be body, because we want to center anything in the body. So then you go ahead and place 2 curly brackets, and then go ahead and enter. And then since I have an IDE, it's going to automatically indent. But for those of you who don't have an IDE, you don't necessarily have to indent. Indenting and all of this all these tabs and spaces, this is just for simplicity and to make it legible. But you could also write this code like this, and it would print out the exact same way. It's just a little trickier to read, that's all. There, so now if we go ahead and refresh, it will print the same exact thing. But the problem with this is the sideways scrolling and how it's so unlegible, which is why I like to do this more, because you can actually read this now. So now inside these body tags, or inside the body styling, I'm going to go ahead and use a new command that may seem unfamiliar to you, or for some of you, it might actually seem familiar. It's called text align. And then you put a colon, and then you go ahead and align your text. So I want all of the text to be in the center, so I'm going to go ahead and type in center. And then you have to end it with a semicolon. Now you can go ahead and save, and then refresh, and all of the text should be in the center. Right, I deleted them. Okay. Now we can go ahead and also change the color of the text. To do that, we simply write color, then a colon, and then a space, and then since I'm using Visual Studios, they give you a choice of colors with names. Usually these names will work, but in some places or some browsers they don't. And to make it multi-browser compatible, which means that to make this color work in all browsers, I'm going to go ahead and go a little old-fashioned with RGB. RGB stands for red, green, blue. And then you put 3 numbers in here successively, and the first number, let's say it's a 10, you want 10 red, you want, let's say 50 green, and then 100 blue. That's how RGB works. But numbers only go to 255. Now if you go ahead and type in just RGB and then the 2 parentheses, and then click on this button right here for Visual Studios, you can go ahead and choose your color like this. So I like this color. I'm gonna go ahead and put a semicolon, save, and then refresh. Now we have colored text. We can also make a background color. This works with a lot of things, not just the body. This can also work for what I'm about to show you guys next. So I'm gonna go ahead and just make it aquamarine because that looks like it would go with this color. There you go. So now you have a background color with some more color right here. Now what I'm about to show you next will be a little tricky. So, okay, this element is called the div element, and the div element is pretty much a divider. Now what's tricky about this is the ID and the class. So for now we'll just make a simple div element and then go ahead and put in a paragraph element, which you should be familiar with by now, and type hello world. And then there you go. So now if I go ahead and get rid of this div, it's the same text. So what the div does pretty much is it divides code into segments. So now with divs you can do very tricky things like this. You can go ahead and add an ID, and an ID has to be unique. Now it can be text, but there can't not be any spaces. So I usually use underscores, or I just capitalize the first letter of every word, except for the first word. So if I want to go ahead and type let's see, I'm gonna go ahead and type in ID. No, my ID. So now what you can do is in the CSS you can go ahead and create a new one of these, but instead of writing just the word body, to access an ID in CSS we use hashtags. And then right next to the hashtag you're gonna go ahead and write this text. So I made it my ID, and then go ahead and put the curly brackets, and then I'm going to go ahead and change the color of this text. RGB. I'm going to make it green-ish. Now if you save and refresh, you'll see that this text has another color. The reason why is because anything inside of these div tags, we change the color of it to this by accessing the div using an ID. Now you can also use a class. The class is pretty much the same. It has pretty much the same concept, but you can have many classes. So right now I can go ahead and change that. So whenever you want to access a class in CSS, you use a period instead of a hashtag. It works. The thing about classes is you can use one class over and over and over again, whereas with IDs you can only use one ID once. H3 hi. See, that's the thing about classes. Now if I were to go ahead and change these two back to IDs, it would not work because you cannot have two IDs with the same name. So now if I go ahead and save and refresh, usually that doesn't work. Oh well. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and start making this a game, and you guys can follow along. So the title, I'm going to make it Adventure Game. So the idea of this video is to make, or right now is to make an adventure game. Now this is going to take a lot of time because it is redundant. So go ahead and save. There you go. So now we have an adventure game title, and it's centered because I used the text align center. So now I'm going to go ahead and create a div. Let me go ahead and get rid of this because there is no ID my ID. So now, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and call this div story. And I'm going to go ahead and make it a class because we're going to need to use it multiple times. So div class story, and then we have our start tag right here with the attribute class story, and then we have our end tag right there. In between, whatever we write in between will be changed, will be affected when we style it. So in here I'm going to go ahead and put in a paragraph element. Now this paragraph element, I'm going to go ahead and write the story. So the adventure game, the main goal of this adventure game is to pretty much escape. So you are trapped in a, okay, I'm going to go ahead and use this. You are trapped on, no, you woke up trapped on a sandy island with only one shoe. Actually, now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the next thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to make a list. So let me go ahead and save this first and then refresh. Because now we have this. You woke up trapped on a sandy island with. So now right here, I'm going to make a list. The way we make lists in HTML is first we have a start tag UL and then an end tag UL. In between these, I'm going to go ahead and write a new tag called LI. Now in between these LI tags, we can go ahead and write our text. So you woke up on a sandy island with only one shoe. So now if I go ahead and save this, you have your first bullet point. Except for the bullet point is right here. That's because I need to go ahead and edit this div. That way I can make the bullet point closer. Or I could go ahead and do this. So now this is how I want to edit just the UL. I want to edit just everything inside UL using CSS. To do this, first we access the div, which is story, or the class is story. So we're going to go ahead and use a period and then write story. Now we're going to go ahead and put a space, and then we want to access this UL. And like I said earlier, in order to access an element, you just write the element's name. So in that case, that'd be UL. Then we put in the two curly brackets, and then I'm going to go ahead and fix it. Text align, justify. Let's see if that does anything. There, it does. But I don't like that because it's all the way at the left. I want it towards the center. And to do that, we have to access just the div. So we're going to write dot story and then go ahead and edit that in the CSS by changing the width of this div. So as I said earlier, in HTML everything is already set to default, and the default for sizes is 100% width. I want to go ahead and change that to 50% width. Oh, sorry. To do that, we go ahead and write width, the colon, and then go ahead and write 50% or whatever you're looking for with the semicolon. Now if we save it and then go ahead and write it, it's all aligned to the left. So to center it again, we have to add padding. padding is pretty much space. Padding and margin are pretty much the same thing, except padding is, okay, imagine a box. So to help you guys imagine, I'm gonna go ahead and make a box, a 3-pixel border. By the way, that's how you make a border. So now, right, I have to write solid. So now we have a box. So what margin does is it controls the space outside of this line. So right now we have a margin of, I want to say 3 pixels. If we go ahead and set margin to 0 pixels, or just 0 in general, oh right, actually the body has that margin, so we're gonna go ahead and change that by setting the margin 0. So now that we changed the margin in the body, if we go ahead and save, it's gonna move over all the way to the edge of the screen where you can barely see it, right? So what the margin controls is, if I go ahead and make this 10, it's going to control space on all 4 sides. So when I go ahead and refresh, right, I have to make it 10px, sorry. So now, if I go ahead and refresh, it's going to move 10 pixels to the right, to the bottom, and it's going to add 10 pixels margin to all 4 sides. So margin controls space outside of this line, or the border, and then padding controls space inside of the lines. So if I go ahead and set the padding to 50px, px means pixels, and then go ahead and save and refresh, we now have 50 pixel space right here, 50 pixel space right here, 50 pixel space right here, and 50 pixel space right there, or at least 50. So we are going to go ahead and get rid of this margin 0. I'll just keep that at default for now. Get rid of this margin 10. And then I'm going to go ahead and control the padding just on the left. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and type in -left. And instead of 50 pixels, I want it in the middle of the screen, no matter what type of screen it is. Even if it's this small, or even if it's as small as this box. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and fix up the padding to 25%. So now if I go ahead and refresh, it's back in the center. So now if I go ahead and get rid of this border and just type in border none, which is default, I'm left with this. So now I can go ahead and continue making my list. So let's see, let's come up with more materials. He came trapped on a sandy island with only 1 shoe, a broken oar, and for those of you who do not know what an oar is, it's the little stick that they use to paddle rafts and boats. And okay, so that's all they woke up with. Only 1 shoe and a broken oar. So now if I go ahead and save that, I have another list item right here. Now, I think that these are too close. The way I can break them up is by using a line break. Now, a line break means in HTML just a space. And to make a line break, we go ahead and use BR. Now, it's again just like doctype HTML, where it only has 1 tag. Right, you cannot go ahead and, let me go ahead and save, refresh, and then there you go. Now they have a little more space. Now I think the text is a bit too small because I'm even squinting to read that. To change the font size or the font itself, we go back up, so we have div class story, and then inside of that class, or inside of that divider, we have all of this content, and it looks a bit small to me. To make it bigger, we can go back to editing the dot story, and then go ahead and type in font dash size. So now, you can go ahead and put in whatever font size you want. But now, you can't write just 14, because you have to use pixels. So 14 pixels is not the same as it looks in Microsoft Word. Because 14 pixels does not look this small, or 14 doesn't look this small on Microsoft Word on a normal font. Instead, 14 looks a little bigger, so we have to adjust ourselves to pixels. I'm going to go ahead and set it to 25 pixels since I know that's big enough. Now, the title is seeming almost the same size, and I don't like that, so we can go back up to the title, and now we have a couple of options. If we're going to make another title like this, and we want it to have the same style, then we can just call H1. So right here, we can go ahead and call H1, and then the two curly brackets, and then we can go ahead and put in our font size, which you can specify it as anything. I'm gonna go ahead and make it 55 pixels. Now, let me go ahead and get rid of the padding and the margin. So now we have adventure game. You woke up trapped on a sandy island with only one shoe and a broken oar. And now we need to continue writing. So right after, now that we finished the UL, if you have an IDE that closes tags like this, you can go ahead and do that. If not, just enter down underneath and then keep programming. I'm going to go ahead and put in another P element. Again, you can do whatever you want. Now that you guys know pretty much the basics on HTML, you can go ahead and write in whatever you want, make up your own game, but stay tuned for the next video, because the next video is going to teach you guys how to go ahead and make the buttons and how to program the buttons. Okay, thanks for watching. Goodbye now. And if you guys have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments below and subscribe.